Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank Carbon and Matter for sending this story to me. Some of you might have heard of the Slave Bible. This is where chapters were removed from the Bible because, number one, they did not want us to know who we really truly are. We are not what these folks have been describing for all these centuries. We're not. And you can see a lot of it in the behavior of the people. Number two, and what I mean by the behavior of the people before I move on is if we were really the inferior people that they claim we are, they wouldn't be worried about us. They worry about us too much, and that gives it all away. Okay. I mean, let's face it, white people worry about black people too much. That should tell you something ain't right. All right. An ant is inferior to a human being. I don't know anybody that gets up in the morning and all they do is worry about an ant, something that is much more inferior than you are. And you worry about that all day long. Where's that ant? What is that ant doing? Oh, I got to see the ant. What's going on with the ant? You don't do that. But that's what they do when it comes down to us. And that should tell you, that should send up a red flag that something ain't right. And what's not right is the lies that have been told. And they're worried about us rising and finding out the truth. We're going to find out the truth regardless. There's nothing they can do to stop that. Just understand that. They can't prevent you from knowledge about yourself, especially if you're out here pursuing it. They can't tell you nothing. Screw them talking about we're making stuff up or claiming history that's not ours and all. Screw all that. They ain't in no position to tell you nothing. And ladies and gentlemen, they carved up this Bible, number one, to prevent you from knowing who you really truly are. You are not no slave. You're not. And if you go and look at European history, they've spent more time in slavery than us. Go read about slave trade in Europe. They were trading their people for a much longer period than we were traded. And number two, they wanted you to be an obedient slave. We don't have to be obedient to these people. Just understand those passages in the Bible was never talking about white folks. It was never talking about them. Go and read the full chapter. Don't read and don't let them tell you what those slave passages mean. It had nothing to do with anyone with a pale face. These folks are the last to arrive on the planet. How could it have anything to do with them? It doesn't. Number three, they gave you this carved up Bible because they wanted you to not rebel against the slavery. Well, rebellions happened all the time. It's just that they didn't tell you about all of the rebellions that happened in America. They were happening in the Caribbean too. These uprisings were constantly happening. Okay, I found some I never heard about and did videos on them. I did one on Slocum, Texas. I did one on the uprisings on the ships. I did a couple of them, and I was like, wow, I'd never even heard of this slave rebellion. But that's what they've done. So you should never want your history from your former slave masters or their offspring. You shouldn't want any history from these folks. You should be seeking your own history. and get to the truth. The truth is really out here, ladies and gentlemen. These folks can't tell you nothing. And I know we are not what they are describing because their actions give it away, y'all. Just watch their actions. If we were really the inferior beings that they claim, they wouldn't be worried about us so much. White people worry about black people too much. That's how I know we are not the inferior people that they're trying to tell us. I don't take that mess from them. And you shouldn't either. Seek and you will find. The answers are there, but you can't get them involved in the answers. We are so much more than anything we've been told. Now, ladies and gentlemen, an ant is in your house. An ant is inferior. Yeah, you're going to get rid of the ant, but you ain't going to spend the next X amount of years of your life worried about what an ant is doing. Oh my God, what is that ant doing? What is that ant? Where is the ant? What are the ants all gathering together? What's going on? You don't do that. But that's what they do to us. You don't worry about nothing inferior like that. But they worry about us way too much. And that gives it away. You should never want any history from these folks, especially after living through all this subjugation. We are far greater than anything ever told. And don't let them tell you you claim in history that's not yours. They're not in any position to say that to us, especially all the cultural appropriation they have done. They are not in any position to tell you anything like that. You should be dismissing anything that comes from these people, especially when it comes down to who we are. Many of us already know we are those Hebrews spoken about in the Bible. We already know. But I'm going to let you listen to this video so that you can hear it from them and start getting a better understanding and seeking a better understanding about who you are. We are in the final days of this Gentile society. This mess is coming to an end. The truth have to come out. Before I play the video, I want to show you this slave Bible. Remove passages to instill obedience and uphold slavery. And what they're leaving out is you ever finding out who you are. That's another reason why they took so much out of it. The slave Bible on display at Washington's Museum of the Bible has a mere 232 chapters, showing how whole chapters were removed to instill obedience, prevent rebellions, and promote the horrors of slavery. And they don't want the slaves to know who they are. Now, I was reading something else online that said they took up to 90% out of the Old Testament and 50% out of the New Testament. Now, let's face it, those of us that know the book, we know when they're talking about slavery and slaves obey your master, they weren't talking about anybody white. They weren't talking about Edomites. They weren't talking about Moabites. They weren't talking about any of these hybrid groups that are on the planet. It was never talking about them at all as slave masters. but they made it about themselves. I'm going to go ahead and play this video for you.
Inside Washington's Museum of the Bible, a single volume that is like no other. The so-called Slave Bible, remarkable not for what's in it, but for what's not.
So about 90% of the Old Testament's been removed, and about 50% of the New Testament's been removed. To put it another way, a normal King James Version has 1,189 chapters in it. The Slave Bible has only 232.
Missing are chapters and verses that might have encouraged uprisings. Book of Exodus, redacted. No story of Moses demanding Pharaoh, "Let my people go." Gone is Galatians, and the verse, "There is neither bond nor free, for ye are all one in Christ Jesus." And no Jeremiah, "Woe unto him that useth his neighbor's service without wages."
What they've left in are verses such as Ephesians 6:5, which is the famous verse, "Slaves, be obedient to your master."
Looking at this Bible, it's hard to tell that anything's been taken out of it.
That's correct. I mean, it looks like a normal book. For many enslaved Africans, this would have been the first time they were exposed to the Bible.
A Bible selectively edited to instill obedience, using religion to underpin the horror of slavery. When people encounter this exhibit, what lasting impression do you want them to leave with?
But we want to pass the message on that may this never happen again. The Bible itself is a whole book. It's not one that you get to carve up and use this piece or that piece.
The Slave Bible designed to repress rebellion, but it didn't work. Enslaved people in the Caribbean constantly fought against slavery until emancipation.
I think it's very relevant to understand our history, not just American history, but our African American history, our roots, and how we got to this point.
A dark chapter in the history of the good book. Jeff Bennett, NBC News, Washington.
So, ladies and gentlemen, you heard that, right? Okay, so they carved up the Bible.
You've been keeping the secret for a while. I've been keeping the secret.
All right, don't care about that. So they've been using the Bible as a tool to keep you enslaved and to make you believe that you were nothing on this planet but a slave, and it's not true. Far from the truth. I hope after hearing this, it will bring some of you closer to learning about yourself, doing your family trees, and getting a better understanding of what has been done to us as a people. We may not have all of the answers, but we have enough to know that we've been lied to for a very long time. And we are still being lied to. And we are still being forced as an underclass in America just by raising this reparation issue that's going on right now. You can see some of them don't even want to talk about reparations. They don't want to deal with the subject. You got your Bernie Sanders that said flat out no, because see, these folks have been living very highly off of our subjugation. They don't want that to change. And they also know, and what Bernie Sanders won't tell you, our rise is their fall, because we have a stand-in history of always accelerating past these folks anytime we are left alone. This is why over 200 towns were torched. Black towns that were prospering were torched down to the ground by white mobs. This is why Black Wall Street was bombed and business owners were killed. They know what you can do if you rise and you have the money and the right footing, and that's what they fear, and they don't want to see that happen. You've been the underclass for 5 centuries and they want to keep it that way. That's why your Bernie Sanders feel the way that he does about reparations. Don't get it twisted. But please tell me what you think, ladies and gentlemen. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. You know, it is so unfortunate. If we were if we were to tell you things about the Bible because it's coming out of a black mouth, you will dismiss it. But maybe now that it's coming out of a white one, you will finally believe it. Peace, family.